Hello and welcome. The three global crises that will dominate next 12 months. I was looking at the treasury yields this morning, and actually, no. Let's not start with the numbers. Numbers are so cold and boring. Let's start with the container ship. Because right now, as you are watching this, there is a massive vessel sitting off the coast of Singapore. That on paper does not exist. Its transponder is off, its cargo is unlisted, and the insurance company in London just pulled its coverage. This isn't a scene from a spy novel. It is the first hairline fracture in the global system we are taken for granted for 80 years. We are standing on the edge of a 12-month window where the old rules of the world do not just bend, they snap. Most analysts, they are basically watching the visible fires, the election cycles, the border skirmishes, but they are missing the structural rot underneath. And if you are sitting in Chicago or Frankfurt or in Sydney, think your 401k or your local grocery prices are shielded from a ghost ship in the Pacific. Because by this time next year, the world is going to look very different. I've spent 20 years in the spaces where these decisions get made, from newsroom to research hubs. I don't care about the talking points here. I care about the truth of how these shifts especially impact your life. This is In Focus with Dr. Adeel. We have this habit, don't we? We assume that because the lights stayed on yesterday, they will stay on for tomorrow as well. It's a human nature. It's what psychologists call normalcy bias. It's like driving a car with a check engine light that has been glowing for 6 months. Eventually, you just stop seeing the red light. Well, the light is flashing now. So, the most analysts will give you the surface read on the next year. They will talk about inflation staying sticky or the next move by the Fed. And honestly, it sounds convincing until you look at what happened the last time the global economy made this exact bet. Are you still with me? Because we are looking at three distinct crises over the next 12 months. The first is obvious but deeply misunderstood. The second, and this is the one that genuinely keeps me up at night, is being almost entirely ignored by the mainstream media. And the third, that's the structural shift that's going to redefine what it means to be a developed nation in the West. Actually, hold on, let me back up a little bit. Before we get into this overlooked crisis, we have to understand one thing: the weaponization of boring. That's the crisis number one. Everyone talks about supply chain, it's the ultimate buzzword. You hear it when your new couch takes 6 months to arrive or when the price of eggs jump 30%. But the real crisis over the next 12 months isn't about stuck ships or clogged ports. It's about trust, specifically maritime insurance. For over 300 years, a handful of firms in the West, centered in the city of London, have ensured the world's trade. This is the boring glue that holds civilization together. Did you know one thing? The entire modern insurance industry started in the 17th century London coffee house called Lloyd's. Merchants and sailors gathered there to share the risk of sea voyages. Today, that one coffee shop still influences the price of the coffee in your kitchen. It used to be simple. A ship from Brazil could dock in New York because everyone trusted the paperwork backed by the Western banks. But we are witnessing a great fracture now. Nations like China, here we comes again, Russia and Iran are moving towards shadow fleets. Thousands of aging ghost tankers operating outside the Western financial net. These ships often turn off their transponders, which is AIS, to disappear from GPS, performing ship to ship transfers in the middle of the ocean to bypass transactions. Interesting? Yes, for me as well. The interesting fact is, experts estimate there is now over 600 ghost ships roaming the oceans. Many are over 20 years old, long past their sell by date, carrying millions of barrels of oil with no standard insurance. If one spills, there is no company to sue and no one to pay for the cleanup. Now, why does a family in Ohio or Ontario care about a bunch of lawyers in London? Because when these boring systems break, the price of everything from fuel in your truck to grain in your bread becomes volatile in a way we haven't seen since 1970s. This isn't just a glitch anymore. It's a deliberate dismantling of the global trade map. In old world, efficiency was king. In this new world, geopolitics is the tax man. And here is the part nobody on cable news is telling you. Once that map is torn up, the costs stay high permanently. We are moving from a just in time economy to a just in case economy. And just in case is expensive. But let me pivot a little bit, because as bad as trade fracture is, it's actually predictable. You can see a ship, you can track a port. What isn't being talked about and what is arguably more dangerous is what's happening in the credit markets. This is where the whole picture starts to shift in a way most people completely miss. While we are watching the ships, the very way we pay for those ships is undergoing a silent revolution. So we have a world where trade is fracturing into shadow fleets. But how do these nations and companies pay for those ships, that oil, and those new factories? They do it with debt. For a decade, we lived in a fantasy of free money, low interest rates, easy borrowing, and the belief that debt didn't really matter as long as the printing presses were warm. But the fantasy has a deadline. In the next 12 months, the global economy hits a brick wall. Analysts call it maturity wall. It's the moment when trillions in corporate and government debt, issued back when rates were near zero, must be refinanced at today's brutal price. Think about it like this: it's like having a 2% mortgage for 5 years, and suddenly the bank knocks on your door and says, "Hey, starting next month, your rate is 8%. For a family in Ohio, that's a disaster. For a country, that's a regime changing event. The staggering figures in 2026 alone, governments and corporations are projected to borrow $29 trillion dollars from the markets. That's the 7% jump from just 2 years ago. In the US, the Congressional Budget Office, which is called CBO, projects that interest costs are rising so fast that they are driving the deficit toward 1.9 trillion this year. Roughly 78% of all borrowing by major developed nations right now isn't for new roads or new schools, it's just to pay back the interest on the old debt. Imagine a business where 80% of your revenue goes just to keep the lights on and pay the bank. You aren't growing, you are just trading water in a storm. Think about the financial anxiety that ripples from Wall Street to Main Street whenever a new conflict ignites. Now imagine that anxiety becoming the default setting because the government can no longer afford to pave roads or pay teachers while servicing debt that has quadrupled in cost. Most analysts are looking at GDP, they should be looking at the interest to tax revenue ratio. So, the history tells us that when a country starts spending more than 15% to 20% of its tax revenue just on interest, things get very ugly very fast. It leads to austerity, a polite word for cutting the services you rely on while your taxes stay high. So, we are already seeing net interest payments in the US hit record high, tied with levels not seen since 1991. And yet, a massive as that financial bubble is, it's not the most dangerous thing we are facing. Because even if we fix the money, if we print more or slashes rates again, we have a deeper problem. And what that problem is, the problem with the work itself, because while the maturity wall is a crisis of capital, the next wall we are hitting is a crisis of human labor, and the AI revolution that's supposed to replace it. But that's a story the spreadsheets cannot tell you. This is the single most important section of this whole discussion. The reason you need to stay until the end, because this will make you think differently. Think about the journey we have taken. We have a physical crisis with shadow fleets breaking global trade. We have a financial crisis with the maturity wall of death crushing all the governments. And now we hit the third pillar, which is called the productivity paradox. We were told AI would make us all more productive, right? The dream of the 20-hour work week, but what we are seeing over the next 12 months is a brutal reality. Companies are seeing massive gains, record profits, faster output, but the workers, they aren't seeing a dime of it. In fact, they are seeing the exit door. We are looking at the largest displacements of middle class, white collar labor in human history. I'm not talking about robots in the factories or automated warehouses. Those stories are decades old. I'm talking about something different. I'm talking about paralegals in London's, the coders in Bangalore, the junior analysts in the New York. And here's the shocking figure. A recent study by Goldman Sachs suggests that generative AI could automate the equivalent of 300 million full-time jobs globally. In the US, in Europe, nearly two-thirds of current jobs are exposed to some degree of AI automation. And I remember talking to a researcher who told me quite bluntly, with the new LLM models, I can do with 5 people what I used to do with 50. Think about those 45 people. They are your neighbors. They are the people buying cars in Ohio and paying mortgages in Ontario. If we take the middle out of the middle class, the social contract doesn't just fry, it snaps. An economy is a circle. Businessman needs workers to create products, and those workers need wages to buy those products. So, another interesting fact which I came across, in the 1960s, the average US CEO made about 20 times what their workers made. And today that ratio is over 344 to 1. As AI replaces the mid level workers, that gap does not just grow, it becomes a canyon. So, this is the moment you need to lean in. This is the moment you need to think. So, this is the policy obstruction or dry academic paper. This is the reality of people's lives in 2026. We are about to find out what happens when an economy stops needing the very people it was built to serve. Look, I don't tell you this to scare you. I tell you this because being in focus means seeing the world as it is, not as we wish it was. So the next year is going to be very difficult, and we are going to see the maritime system fracture, the debt wall hit, and the labor market transform. We have to be honest with ourselves, especially Western audience. particularly who are living in the United States of America, have a finely turned radar for false resolution. I cannot tell you it's all going to be okay by Christmas, but I can tell you this: systems that are broken needs to be rebuilt. The question is whether we have the intellectual honesty to admit they are broken before the crash happens. So, next time you see a headline about market volatility, do not just look at the ticker. Ask yourself, who is this actually hurting? And what is the boring system behind it that just failed? Leave this video a little smarter and perhaps little more unsettled, because that is where real change starts. The single biggest takeaway, if I would say, from this video you will have is this: the system that built the 20th century are no longer fit for the 21st century. And the next 12 months will be the moment that reality becomes impossible to ignore. If this change the way you are reading the headlines this week, please subscribe, because what's coming in the next few episodes is going to go even deeper into questions nobody else is asking out loud yet. So I'm Dr. Adeel. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.